Welcome to the Winged Wheel Podcast, the number one source for news, analysis, and discussion on the Detroit Red Wings, the NHL, and all things hockey. Here are your hosts, Ryan Hanna, Brad Crisco, and Evan Lopsinger.
So just behind the camera in the studio is this door that goes into like a storage area in my house. It's about chest height, or if you're Brad, like a couple inches above your head. And in there are all of our prospect profiles. That must be it, because every night while I'm editing the podcast, like after we record, I hear like a slight knocking, which logic dictates that that's just like air pressure or something. But I think it's the prospect profiles. It's the Misa conversation. It's the Martone conversation, just knocking, waiting to come out. And I don't know how much longer we can ignore that, guys.
What's it in The Simpsons? Hugo lives in the attic.
There's a meme to be made here. It's December 8th. This feeling around the Red Wings fandom and covering this team isn't a surprise from like October to now, but this does feel like every December or most Decembers as long as we've been covering this team. It's very prospect profile-y right now.
If I told you the Red Wings could come out of this month at 500 from this point forward, would you take down the tree? Is it that Christmas tree?
No, absolutely.
Okay. I'm just checking.
Been February will be 10 years of this show. And we have not done nearly enough playoff content for me to reward a
exactly
500
one
record.
We've done exactly one.
No, two.
Two?
Yeah.
Wow, how could I forget?
Because it was years 1 and 2 of the show.
Okay. Some big conversations today. And I know that sounds rich, but genuinely some big conversations today. Welcome to the Winged Wheel Podcast, folks. Here to talk to you about all things Detroit Red Wings hockey, the world of the NHL, and lots more. I'm one of your hosts, Ryan Hanna.
I'm Brad Crisco.
And I'm Evan.
On this episode of the Winged Wheel Podcast, we're going to talk about Detroit's two games, the Ottawa game and the Colorado game. Brace yourself. There's going to be some familiar tones in there. And then we're going to have a conversation about what this season is. Is this a write-off? Is the tank on? What's the best path forward for the Red Wings, for Yzerman, for Lalonde? We're going to be talking about the goalie situation with Cossa and Husso and Talbot and Lyon being out. And then we're going to get into some larger conversations about, the rest of the Atlantic, what's happening in there, where the rebuild is at before we jump into NHL news, including all the drama in the world that seems to surround the New York Rangers, and more before we jump into overtime. Before all that, quickly want to let you know that this podcast is primarily supported by our Patreon supporters, patreon.com/wingedwheelpodcast if you want to support the show. You get access to benefits like our bonus overtime episodes, which record right after these main ones. You also get access to our Patreon exclusive Discord. In addition, you're automatically entered into all of our giveaways. We give away 2 tickets to every Detroit Red Wings home game, going directly to our Patreon supporters. So again, patreon.com/wingedwheelpodcast. Secondly, we are hosting Winged Wheel Podcast Night in partnership with the Grand Rapids Griffins on Saturday, January 18th. And we're hosting Winged Wheel Podcast Night at the LCA in partnership with the Detroit Red Wings on Saturday, March 29th. The Red Wings giveaway is a Winged Wheel Podcast and Detroit Red Wings co-branded barber pole jersey, which is awesome. And the Griffins giveaway, if you're watching on YouTube, it's right in front of Brad there. It's this gray beanie. It is co-branded with the Griffins logo on front, and if Brad flips it around, you'll see the Winged Wheel Podcast logo on the back. These things are awesome.
They're sweet.
Yeah, the Red Wings and the Griffins do not miss with the co-branded merch. It's very, very cool. So go to wingedwheelpodcast.com/links to get your tickets, or go to the links in the bio. Once the tickets run out, they run out, and this is one of the only ways to get this co-branded merch. Sometimes we give it away to our Patreon supporters as well down the road. So again, patreon.com/wingedwheelpodcast and wingedwheelpodcast.com/links for Patreon, the hosted nights with the Detroit Red Wings and the Grand Rapids Griffins, and more. Fun stat that everyone is firmly aware of. The Detroit Red Wings have lost 5 straight 1-goal games. Colorado 2-1, Ottawa 2-1, Boston 3-2, Vancouver 5-4, and then Jersey 5-4. And then they won a 1-goal game against Calgary before that. And their previous loss, if you go a little bit further back, is Boston. It's a 1-goal game. San Jose is a 1-goal game. This team, someone gave me a line, which was, at no point in any of our last, X games did I really feel good or excited about this team. And it feels corny to bring up last season where the Red Wings didn't even make the playoffs, but the excitement of last season is just completely missing this season. And that's what they said. There's like, at no point do I feel the hype and the excitement and the individual narratives from last season in this season. And there's nothing I could do to refute it. And nor would I, because I completely agree.
One fundamental difference between last season and this season is Sprong, Gostisbehere, Perron, Wallman. What do they all have in common? Every once in a while, they score a goal. Not a lot of goals, a goal. And when you're losing by one over and over and over and over again, a goal makes a real big difference. What was the stat you posted in our one group chat yesterday? Andrew Copp's fourth on this team in goals, and he hasn't scored in 15 games or something like that.
Yep.
It's not hard to figure out what the difference is this year. It is the offense. As time goes on, and I was saying this to you guys before we start recording, as the season progresses, I'm actually blaming Lalonde less and less as it gets worse and worse, because I watch Sherratt and Petrie and Gustafsson and Hall parade out there, and none of them are good. I don't think any of these guys are as bad as the memes make them out to seem, but they're not far off. It's a tough watch. And the Red Wings are putting up league average defensive numbers with that group. But time and time again, when it matters in close games, they cannot find any offense. And as anybody will tell you, even a defenseman, two defensemen sitting next to me, you can scheme up defense easier than you can scheme up offense. And in a game like yesterday, which we'll talk about, I actually thought the Red Wings outplayed Colorado up into the third period. But what couldn't they do? Score a goal. They made Alex Georgiev look like prime Dominic Hasek. He's been the worst goalie in the league by a country mile this year. That's the difference. That is the fundamental difference. And it's not surprising. We sat here all summer going, 9th in the league offense. I don't know. I don't see that this year. We were hoping maybe they could get to league average. I don't care what stat you look up. They're 32nd in almost every offensive category by a lot. Like it's frustrating. And hey, let's call a spade a spade. I know you two guys won't admit it. Friggin' defenseman. People love offense. Even when you're losing, if you're scoring a whole bunch of goals, people are at least going to be a little entertained. These constant 2-1, 1-0, 3-2 losses they're boring. They suck. Nobody wants to watch them. At least the Vancouver and the New Jersey games gave us a bunch of awful goaltending and a lot of entertainment. But yeah, the vibes could not be further from what they were last year.
I think I have some points where I differ from you. Like you said, you blame Lalonde less and less. And
I'm not saying he's free of blame. Like there are warts, but this is more a response to the like absolute visceral hate he's getting online. Don't get me wrong. I'm not convinced he's the guy of the future. I'm not 1,000% convinced he's the guy of right now. But in the percentage of blame, Yzerman's roster building versus what Lalonde's trotting out, I was maybe 50-50 a month ago. I'm closer to 70-30 now. Like, it's tough, man. Like, what's he going to do? He can't go out there and shoot the puck in the net himself.
Has he tried?
He should.
No, he hasn't.
You want to score more? Yeah. Okay, let's do the games quickly here first. And I say quickly because it's not going to be a hard one to talk about. The Ottawa game, Detroit lost 2-1. It was on the road. It was in Ottawa. The first time these two teams played this year. And, to Brad's point about excitement, they couldn't even give us any fireworks. The most drama in this game was the terrible officiating. Like, just absolutely awful. That third period holding penalty on Kasper. Like, I'll talk about how the scoring happened in a second here. But Kasper basically trying to stop Norris from getting a break. And he was not about to get beat, but he was moving his feet, got his arm kind of across Norris for a split second, and Norris immediately stopped skating, turned around, grabbed Kasper's arm, and fell intentionally. And the referee looked at that and said, yeah, penalty to Kasper for holding. Abysmal call. I tweeted this out, but I was like, that's like a baby being fooled by peekaboo. Like, that is just such pathetic officiating. I don't care, and I know you're going to talk for a second here, Brad, about the balance of the game and a makeup call. And I know you're right, but I don't care about that if the player stops moving his feet and just doesn't do what he needs to do to draw the call. I'm sorry, he doesn't get the call. That is basic house league stuff. Like, that is so frustrating to watch. We ranted last episode. Move your feet. Keep your feet moving. That's how you're going to get the call. And if a guy gives up, don't give him the penalty. That's pathetic. That is not good for hockey. It is not a good watch. And it was flat out a terrible call. Not only should it not have been a penalty against Kasper, and I'm biased. Like, yeah, obviously we're going to say the call shouldn't have been against Detroit. If anything, he held Kasper's arm. He gave away what would have been a minor penalty against Detroit and made a play that should have been called against him. That one annoyed the hell out of me. It didn't end up mattering because Detroit was perfect on the PK with the help of an offside review, but still, it annoyed me.
I forgot we talked about embellishment last episode, and I don't know if it's on us that the Red Wings took an embellishment call in both games since then, but
it's the curse.
It's the curse. Yeah, and
we should talk about scoring 10 goals in a game from now on.
We should.
We absolutely should.
Well, if there's anyone that could happen, it's the next one.
Yeah, careful, because that monkey paw
10
is
goals
right.
for who?
Yeah.
We're talking about a 9-1 Buffalo win. I know why that Kasper penalty was called. And first of all, the funniest part of that penalty to me is I've had rants on this podcast before about I hate freeze frames in hockey to try to justify a point in a sport that moves exceptionally fast. But the freeze frame of Kasper being a couple steps ahead of Norris with his arm behind him as Norris is holding on to it and Kasper got the penalty. There's no scenario where you can see that freeze frame and go, oh, yeah, wow, that's atrocious. Ottawa had two, I'll call it fairly soft penalties called against them early in the third period that benefited Detroit. That's why that call was made, because the refs are like, oh, we screwed up. We got to even this out. Who was it? Tim Peel went to the Nashville bench the one game against Detroit and said, I had to get Nashville for a penalty.
That's why he got fired.
Yeah. And that's what this was. That's 1,000% what this was. There were 3 penalties in the third period called to this point. None of them should have been penalties. And it was just refs who lost control of the game and were trying to make it right, air quotes. And it's game management. This is in a hard-fought playoff game or an important game between two top teams, and you don't see a lot of the ticky-tack stuff called, and yeah, the penalties start averaging out, and that sort of game management, I think most sports fans can understand. This is why people get mad at game management. You screwed up. Okay, you screwed up. Just move on with the game. Let it wipe from your memory. When you hold on to it and you keep doubling down and making it worse and worse and worse, you end up with this garbage.
So the game was 1-0 until the third period. It was a typical Red Wings are playing poor game. It was lifeless until the third. They were saved a little bit in terms of energy by a nice power play goal that was a tic-tac-toe, Tarasenko, Compher, DeBrincat. Nice to see DeBrincat score against his former team. He was fairly getting the boos from the Sens fans all night, and really cool to see him score. And I thought, okay, Detroit's getting their life at the right time here. And the game just kind of got silly with the penalty calls and the management. Detroit was playing a much more aggressive PK. Like, if you're going to draw any silver lining, the PK was 5 for 5. Again, they had to challenge a call for offside and they won, thankfully, but they went 5 for 5 on the PK. They played more aggressive. They were, challenging the puck. They were challenging the puck carrier, especially on the perimeter. It wasn't perfect, but they were doing a much better job of that. And oh my God, results right away. And every time we've ranted about this, we've said, the results might not be perfect. It is ironic that the first game I saw them do that in a long time, the results were perfect. But then at the end of the game, back to 5-on-5, Josh Norris is breaking down, bearing in on Seider, probably has Seider a little deep, but just a perfect shot, beats Husso clean. You would have loved to have seen Husso save that, but it was also like an unreal shot from Norris, and under a minute left, the Senators win at 2-1 in regulation. Just a gut punch for a game that didn't really have a lot of hope as you're going through it.
Yeah, it's one of those goals where the inches of a game matter, because I don't think Seider played it particularly terrible. He probably backed up an extra 6 inches to a foot from where he should have. High blocker, like any goalie will tell you, under the bar, high blocker side, it's impossible to stop unless it hits the knob of your stick. And you factor in Norris threw in the little toe drag on that release as well, just to get it around Seider. There were a lot of things that made me really angry that game. That really wasn't one of them. It's just, hey, sometimes you get beat. And on that shot, a couple Red Wings just got beat.
Moving on. So again, draw whatever silver linings you want. Moral victories are for teams who have any kind of real victories otherwise. So I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, it's great that they went 5 for 5 on the PK. Yeah, they lost in regulation with a minute left against a divisional foe. So
that they were essentially tied with in points at that moment.
And that's like, we've talked a lot, like that's the winnable game. If you're not going to win against the better teams because you don't have the roster, that's the winnable game that you need to draw the points from. And I think Larkin and Seider and Raymond and a bunch of other Red Wings have said this too. Like, it's frustrating to not win those. Then you move on to Colorado at home. And if you thought Ottawa was tough, Colorado, facing McKinnon, Makar. And that game was like, a 1-goal game going to the third period. You're down just a goal. Lucas Raymond got a tip on a Dylan Larkin shot to give your team some life late in the second period. And they had, one shot through most of the third period, 15 plus minutes. Before that, they pulled the goalie with a few minutes left and they had a lot of pressure. But before that, it was like nothing.
Context matters more than most, I feel, in this game, because we've seen this script from the Red Wings. Down by 1, third period. Getting back to my rant earlier in the episode, they couldn't generate any offense. None. 0. And sometimes you have an off night. Happens. You don't like to see it, but it happens. I felt like the Red Wings controlled the play for most of the first 2 periods of that game against Colorado.
I thought Colorado had the off night.
Yeah, I was watching that game. Even though they were down 2-1 into the third period, I'm going, I'm good with how this game has played out. Georgiev made a bunch of unreal saves. It was his first good game of the year, I'm pretty sure, because you look at the stats and you're like, well, there's no way he's had a good game to put up those numbers. And yeah, the Red Wings were making him look like Prime Hasek a little bit, but they were at least generating the chances. They were controlling the play. So there was nothing that was happening in that game that made you think they couldn't keep doing it in the third period. And an episode or two ago, we were talking about score effects. Yeah, the team trailing's generally going to carry the bulk of the shots because they're trailing. They're more desperate. They have to push offense. Except the Detroit Red Wings, apparently. Like, I'm running out of ways to be frustrated about, hey, you want to win the game? You're losing. You literally can't win if you don't score a goal. You have to score a goal. Can you start pushing the puck down the ice? And they just don't. And with some players on the ice, they just can't. And I understand that. And I accept that. I love Michael Rasmussen. I love Joe Veleno. I love these guys. They're obviously on the Red Wings. We cheer for all Red Wings. But when they're on the ice, they can't push past Makar or Taze or whoever. They are going to struggle to generate offense. But at least try. When Larkin and Raymond are out there, they can do it. And yet they weren't for what felt like, but might literally have been 17 minutes of a third period trailing by 1. I said earlier, in a lot of ways, I'm taking the blame off Lalonde for how things are transpiring on the Wings. This is the one thing he's got to take full blame for, because it can't keep happening exactly like this.
Well,
I have bad news for you, Brad.
I'm aware.
That's it. The Red Wings lose 2-1. A couple games where 2 goals go in and the Red Wings lose both of them. Like the offense can't score. That's where we are. One game Detroit played better. One game Detroit, sucked, but so did the other team. Like, these results just aren't differing, which brings me to our next conversation here, which is this season a write-off? Like, is this a tank season? And we haven't, like last year we said, you want to win because you hit the gas a little bit and the playoffs are within sight, and the playoffs aren't mathematically out of sight, not even close. After this conversation, the truth that the Red Wings can go on one 5-game heater and be right back in it will still hold. And we'll have to, talk about what that means and whether we were wrong, et cetera, et cetera. But like last year, at least they were close in terms of getting the wins and showing that they had the life and they had the juice. The team last year, not every night, but some nights they had the juice. This team does not have the juice. This team, for all the reasons that Brad outlined, like the offense just isn't showing up. They don't have the combination of players that they need. It's another thing I posted online was this team plays whack-a-mole. Like watching them is like certain elements of their game show up any given night, but then you have to like pick any three other important elements and they're just gone. Oh, you're getting good goaltending from Husso that you couldn't have counted on? Great. You don't have the goals to get a win out of that. Oh, your penalty kills showed up? Awesome. You have no 5-on-5 offense as usual. Like you said 70-30, Brad. To me, this is the blame of this season, like this specific season. It never goes further than 60-40. It's usually in the 50s for management and coaching. And we'll have a conversation about the larger rebuild in a minute here. But for this season, unless something drastically changes, I think this season is you're happy about the Edvinsson development. You're happy about the Kasper development. You're happy about Raymond looking like he actually is taking steps to being a superstar, maybe, and Larkin is continuing to thrive. DeBrincat is scoring more. Great. But for the results and the standings, like this is a tank year. Go get a top 5 pick. Go get a top 3 pick. Go win the draft lottery. Get James Hagens. Like that to me, like that's unless my mind has changed and everyone's mind has changed and we see a completely different team start to hit the ice, like I just don't understand how this change is going to come from within. And it doesn't mean the players have to stop trying, because that's never what they'll do and that's not ever what you should expect them to do. And I'm not going to stop rooting for them to win, but you
have to be realistic sometimes,
yeah.
right? Like, yeah, you want your team to win every single game, but you got to look at what the vibes are and the personnel on the team. And right now, compared to last year, the vibes are not there at all.
The team isn't showing up based on the players that they have. Like they're not producing as well as they should. And the players that they have are also not enough to overcome a lot of the deficits that they face on the ice and pertinent to the teams that they play. Both things are true. They're not even close to being the sum of their parts, let alone greater, which is what we said they would have to be to make the playoffs this year. And the sum of their parts is still not a high number. So that's the reality of this year. I am like, my line, call a spade. We know what this season is. I would love to be surprised. And it's the NHL. It's the most random of the major professional sports. Lots can change. We saw what St. Louis did that one year. Great. I don't see it.
Oh, this season's cooked. Hold on. I just got to look into the camera quickly for when I reverse jinx this and they go on a 9-game heater. No, this season's cooked. And I know it's easy to look at the standings and see them only 3, 4, 5 points away from a wild card spot any given night, depending how the other teams are doing, because again, it's probably worth repeating. The Eastern Conference is a giant pile of junk this year, and nobody's pulling away with that last wild card spot. But there's a couple things to keep in mind. It's easy to just look at the point total and say, well, that's not that big of a deficit. The Red Wings, last I checked, were second last in the East. So how many teams do they have to jump to get into a playoff spot? So not only do they have to go on this crazy heater that there's no chance of happening, they have to hope every team between them and the 7th seed stays cold.
So Tampa has the final wild card spot right now with 28 points. So they're 4 points up on the Red Wings, but they only have 24 games played, whereas the Red Wings have 27 played.
And again, how many teams are sitting between Tampa and the Red Wings? Spoiler.
Almost everyone.
Almost everyone. And
Buffalo, Columbus, Ottawa, the New York Islanders, Pittsburgh Penguins, Philly.
6 teams. 7 if you count Tampa. So you got to jump 7 teams. And again, what is the greatest predictor of future events? Past events. This team has been dog crap all year. Where are the goals coming from? Patrick Kane's checked out. Get some value for him at the deadline. You have Husso playing, dare we call a spade, pretty well. Cool. Go get some value for a goalie. The optimistic take that I can have of all this is they have 2 pretty valuable trade chips that will help future success. And watching this offense struggle as they are and looking at the top 10 of this draft and going, there's a lot of offense in there. Long run, it's probably for the best. It's a hard pill to swallow, but the further they fall down the standings right now, the better for future success, because we talk about how toxic a room can get when you go through crap like this. And that is true. And that's a valid point. I'm not dismissing it, but you have to look bigger picture right now. Look at the top 5 scorers in the Red Wings right now. Raymond, DeBrincat, Larkin, Seider, Edvinsson. In that order. Those are the 5 most important pieces on this roster to future success of the Detroit Red Wings. At least they're showing up to some degree. Beyond them, how many players on this team matter for the future of the Detroit Red Wings? Kasper? Maybe Berggren? That's it.
Cossa, technically, I guess.
Technically.
This dude loves to show up late to this podcast and get Brad on a technicality.
Absolutely.
What a life you live, man. That's amazing.
I think anyone who listens to probably any hockey podcast, but specifically the Red Wings podcast, know that just because you look at the standings right now does not indicate what this team actually is. Like, we talked about this maybe a month ago, yeah, sure, the Red Wings are in a mid-off, but they've been bad in almost every single game. This isn't a team that's just had bad puck luck. They are just bad.
You could make a pretty solid case. They're actually ahead points-wise of where their play has dictated they should be, which is jarring to think about because they're way down there. We said that
at, I think, the end of October, and we're like, the Red Wings have been outplayed in almost every single game. The fact that they have this many points is a blessing if the goal is to be a wild card team.
What was it? I think I remember it. They were sitting 5-5-1, and to that point in the season, we could have made the case they outplayed their opponent in 1 game.
I think it was the Predators game, maybe.
Yeah, the early one. I was making a case for 2.
That's right. The eternal optimist.
Yeah.
So they had 11 points. They had 11 points when their best case scenario should have been 4.
And to the point of the schedule, like, I know it's weird to say, but and I've mentioned this a lot recently, but you've played Boston a couple times. And that's a weird thing to say because Boston's usually a strong team. Boston sucks this year. Like, you watch them, you're like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm watching 2 versions of the Red Wings. You've played the Islanders multiple times already. You've played Ottawa now. Like, these aren't strong teams for the most part. Not completely, but Detroit's schedule has been weak of late. And I honestly think the results could have been, I mean, they lost 5 straight, but the results could have been even worse.
Well, they played 2 of the worst teams in the NHL, Anaheim and San Jose, and collected 1 point from those 2 games.
Now, something like you mentioned, Brad, Copp, after looking like he was starting out stronger and finding a little bit more of a well-rounded version of his game, 15 games without a goal. Compher looks nothing like himself, 17 or 18 games without a goal or something like that. Like, you just can't have this as the Red Wings if you're hoping to not even guaranteed make a wild card spot, but just breathe life into this room and have this room believe that this is the core of a team that can achieve something soon. Like, you don't want guys to feel despondent and like the whole season is lifeless and the year hasn't even turned over to 2025 yet. You can't have that. And so when you say, Brad, about, who to lay the blame on, I don't want this to be a litigation on exactly how much is Lalonde's fault and exactly how much is Yzerman's fault. Everyone can agree the coaching has not been up to standard this year. The roster construction has not been up to standard this year. And it depends on what conversation you're having. For the purpose of this season, not the rebuild, because all the optimism and the bright points of the rebuild that we've talked about still holds. But for the purpose of evaluating this season, yes, the roster construction is bad. That hasn't changed. But there's something to be said when you have that many guys not performing. I think Kane you're seeing the age effects on him, and his value offensively is probably on a team where they can do most of the rest of the play on the ice, and he can just contribute in terms of creativity and the actual endpoint offense. And I don't know that the Red Wings are the best fit for him. Compher, Copp, like all of these guys where everything has just completely evaporated from them, that is on the way this team is brought forward on the ice every single night as well. And that's why I never get further than 60-40 in terms of blame. Like, if you want to look within the scope of this season, that to me, you're headed towards needing a change. Otherwise, you're just accepting that that's going to be bad all year. And the right answer could be either one, because just being bad all year probably means Misa or Martone or Hagens or, whatever, the next, Swedish star on Detroit. Let's not discount that. But is it a coincidence that all of these guys are just having terrible years, except for Detroit's best players? Thank goodness for that.
No, it's a coaching problem. Like I said, I'm not absolving Lalonde of all of this. I mean, again, you're only going to get so much out of these guys, which is to say it's not much. But I was thinking about it as you were talking, at least in regards to forwards. Larkin, Raymond, Tyler Mott. You know what that list is for me? The only 3 Red Wings forwards I can say look like they give a shit every game.
DeBrincat,
a little bit, but the way his style of game is played, it's harder to differentiate because he's always that more slow, methodical, give and go, shoot it. He's not a grinder, he's not a burner. So
I just have a hard time blaming one of the only guys producing.
No, I agree. But yeah, man. Again, those top 5 scorers I talked about, Kasper, Cossa.
That's right. Thank you.
You could fire any of these guys into the press box right now, and it doesn't make an ounce of a difference on this team. None. Zero. I was watching the Colorado game. Patrick Kane, man, he's checked out. And I look at his line mates. I don't blame him. I understand why he's doing what he's doing because I don't think it's age. He's just throwing pucks away and making plays that he's smarter than.
Berggren does that. He rides the pine in the press box for eternity.
he's on a plane home.
Yeah, he's on his way back to Sweden.
Patrick Kane's biggest strength has always been his hockey IQ, and you can watch him hold the puck, skating like he's going through mud. So I have no problems if he's going fast, slow, whatever. That's his game. But he's always been good about holding the puck until there's a play. Oh, he's not doing that anymore. He looks up and he sees Compher in double coverage, and his other winger, whoever it happens to be that night, is nowhere to be found, and he's like, screw it, and just fires a pass into double coverage, and it doesn't work. And I can't say I blame him. I would like him to mentally overcome that, but it's just
a 25-year-old Patrick Kane can overcome that because he's got he still has the physical gifts, so don't take that the wrong way, but he has the
ability
expiring physical gifts now that just can't have him overcome those dead weights on his line.
But to the point with everybody else, it's just more obvious with him because you can see what you're not getting. Compher looks like he has the same mentality. Copp, like Rasmussen, Valeno. These are all guys who can do things in their own way. Like Rasmussen runs around like a literal moose on the ice, running through guys, crashing the net. Haven't seen that. Copp and Compher are usually good for winning a few puck battles a game and, mixing it up and getting the puck to the skill guys. Not happening. Joe Valeno, I forget, is on the ice half the time. Berggren's good with the puck, but he's been going in and out lately too, so I can't sit here and just, he's young, he's absolved. No, he's had some off nights lately and some off shifts. It's just
all I hear is motivation and messaging, and
it's Lalonde, yeah.
That is, and I'm not that guy at all. I'm not, when things get rough, the first thing you do is fire a coach, because these are professional athletes. Like, this is their job. They're living every hockey player's dream. Maybe anyone who ever played sports, that's their dream, is to play it professionally.
Not yours. Yours is to get paid to not play professionally.
That's exactly right. 7th defenseman, couple mil a season, get into 20, 30 games. That's perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. No penalty kill.
No.
Maybe some power play when there's injuries, but that's it.
Backup quarterback with the
Evans living Albert Johansson's. Evan wants to live Albert Johansson's
I'm the
life
punt
right
guy. If I could just punt the ball, that would be the dream without having to be chased around by the mutants that play in the NFL.
Yeah. Anyways, carry on.
So, it's on the players too, but, at some point when the message just is the same and it's you're not getting motivated, like, how many guys play for their coach? Like, there's something there that I think is true. And that's unfortunately, it's tough to make trades. GMs will never fire themselves first.
Kevin Adams might be trying right now.
Yeah.
No palm trees in Buffalo.
Yeah. So, depends. like it's tough to watch this team, so I'm like, make a change and I don't care what happens to the team after that. Like if they tank, they tank, they make the play or they make a playoff push, so be it. But doing nothing and watching the same thing over and over again is just so counterproductive to me.
And I think that's the exact right way to put it, Evan. Like this isn't a fair thing, but this is the reality of the league. Is the GM completely free of fault here? No. Like even acknowledging that, the message is being lost in the room and you're having guys not being motivated to come out and execute. And though it is on the players, you can't just fire the players and their salary cap. Otherwise you could probably count 4 or 5 of those guys that'd be off the Red Wings right now. So the coach is the first oftentimes to get moved on from. And the reality is Derek Lalonde has to coach for right now. Steve Yzerman has to build a roster for the foreseeable future and over his entire tenure, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years down the line, he hopes. So like you go back to our conversations about the rebuild and the things that have been positive. You go back to our conversation with Max the last time he was on the show for Good in the Room. Like there are really great things in terms of what's set up for this team. And even if you are annoyed and upset and disappointed in what Yzerman has put together for this season, it still does not take away or borrow or steal from the future optimism. And that's what leads to, okay, a change has to be made. You're looking at the coach here if you want to make a change. Now, again, as you said, and as we've pointed out, maybe you don't. Maybe you just let the season ride out. When you say tank, you're not going into the room telling the guys, hey, don't try to win. Steve Yzerman will never say that publicly, but the acknowledgement that, Hagens would really help this team in a big way. And so unless we were able to land a Jim Montgomery or unless the right guy does come up for coaching, we're not going to rush to make a change just for the sake of making a change. And I think that is the complicated but realistic spot the Red Wings are in right now.
And there's a very good chance that Steve Yzerman and Derek Lalonde agree on this team right now. They may love their working relationship and be like, this season is falling apart. This team stinks. That's on me. But you coach this team to where we can get them, and we'll look on to next season. Like,
could be the case.
Yeah.
If
we don't know
if they're not, and like, I don't think at the end of the day it would make the world of difference in the exact right scenario. But to the point of they're not going to make a change just for the sake of making a change, they're not going to be paying 2 salaries for coaches at the same time unless they need to be.
Well, are the Red Wings, 1-8-2 game away from having to, like, the hand being forced?
No. Early on in these coaching conversations, we said, you bring in, prime Scotty Bowman. It's only going to get you so far. He still has to put Eric Gustafsson on the ice.
I don't think Scotty Bowman would do that. He would bully him too hard.
It's like, for the one thing that I think might push this towards change, and I'm not certain about this, is the fan base is tuning out. Like people are checking out. It's not just the players, the people are checking out. It does not matter who you want to blame. People are not happy, nor should they be. Like this is not. It's
you
not
pay big money to go watch an NHL game, and if this is what the team you're trotting out, and this is how the season's going, people are either going to stop showing up, they're going to stop watching games, and the boo birds are going to fly at home.
It's only getting more and more expensive. Why should they? It's not winning hockey and it's not fun hockey. You can't be losing and boring. That's a bad combination. Okay, we're going to take a quick break and hear from the sponsors of the Winged Wheel podcast back after this. This episode of the Winged Wheel podcast is proudly brought to you by Labatt Blue Light. Created in 1983, this premium light Canadian Pilsner is a delicately balanced beer brewed with Cascade hops and a blend of malt. It's fresh, crisp, and brewed to the highest quality standards. There's a little bit of Canadian kindness in every sip of Labatt Blue Light. How did it get in there? They're Canadian. That's how. You can spread the love yourself by sharing a Labatt. And when you do share a Labatt, you're not just sharing a beer. You're sharing an experience that'll pair with anything from hockey to a hoedown. So next time you're watching hockey with your buds, be sure to share a Labatt because while you might not all root for the same team, although we on this podcast do hope you're rooting for Detroit, you can all enjoy a Labatt Blue Light. We honestly love going to games in Detroit and seeing Labatt being the beer that fans clamor for all over the arena. It's a reliable beer and it's great to have in your hand when celebrating a goal. So head to the link in the description of this episode or the one you see on your screen to find Labatt in stores near you today. You must be 21 or older, and as always, enjoy responsibly. Last point on, the rebuild and everything is just want to acknowledge, like, Kevin Adams had a press conference to just talk about how I don't know that landed how he wanted it to, but basically just said, hey, Buffalo sucks and it's hard to get guys to come here. Buffalo was having a terrible season when everyone was saying this has to be the year that it happens for them. Ottawa, again, like, well, we're very honest about how bad the Red Wings are. Ottawa's in the same spot. Like, they were poised to take a step, and this is the year, and new coach, and blah, blah. Suck again in ways that are, for some reason unfathomable to them. The Canadiens didn't take this massive leap that people were banking on, and they are still just as bad as their roster dictates. Like, this bottom four of the Sabres, the Red Wings, the Canadiens, and the Senators, they all just feed into each other. It's this vicious cycle of none of them is taking a step, so none of them is forcing change in the other ones, and they all just suck for so long. And like, the East is kind of pathetic because of it.
There is a chance that with how bad the knuckle draggers are, who are outside the playoffs, that the Floridas, the Torontos, the Bostons, and the Tampas could all air quotes, retool on the fly and remain the best teams in this division. And we could witness the same mid-off knuckle dragging for another 10 years.
We just miss a whole window of cycling the Atlantic Division.
I have more confidence in those organizations being able to regroup and go at it again than I do at any of those teams of pulling themselves out of the mud.
My thing is, I was thinking about when Kevin Adams said that, and it really made me think about why teams have a hard time getting players. There are advantages to some locales. Like, some guys care about the New Yorks or the LAs or the weather or the taxes. And so they have a certain leg up over the Detroits and the Buffaloes of the league to some degree, depending on what parameter you're looking at. But you know what trumps all of that? Is winning. Because when you're making millions and millions and millions of dollars, you can offset.
It's fun to win. And when you go to work and it's fun, you enjoy it. Like, everyone has that.
And these guys, all, like, virtually 100% of them, there's a negligible amount of guys who come in and don't care. They all want to win the Stanley Cup. If you could guarantee a guy at the time of signing a contract that you'll win the Stanley Cup if you sign with this team, they'll sign with that team. It's that simple. And, for the difference in where you live, does not matter what team you're talking about. These guys are getting paid disgusting, filthy amounts of money. Their quality of life, it's all in the margins. If they care about sunshine that much, yeah, go to Florida, man. But I promise you, the quality of life they have living in Nashville or Utah or Columbus or Detroit or Florida, their millions get them pretty much the same place.
Well, Nashville ain't doing any winning, but I get your point.
They're holy. But like, so when Kevin Adams said that, first I thought, Buffalo might be on the GM hunt before long. And second, I thought, no, even for someone who has touted the difference in the locales and the taxes before, and that's an argument I've made, I acknowledge winning matters more than all of that. And that what is signed for that, then like, that's the case we're looking at with the Atlantic.
You missed what might be the most obvious, hilarious point with Kevin Adams specifically.
I was leaving it for you because I knew you'd want to do this one. It's near and dear to your heart.
I deeply appreciate it. The same ownership group of the Buffalo Sabres owns the Buffalo Bills, one of the most consistently successful franchises over the last 5, 6, 7 years in the NFL. A team that also plays out of, weird, Buffalo.
They play outdoors in Buffalo, for God's sakes.
Yeah. Orchard Park, technically, but it's Buffalo.
Oh, and he got you back for earlier.
Yes, my deep NFL knowledge is being tested.
An organization that built through the draft. They got Josh Allen, and that's a bit of luck. But all the key players at all their other positions, mostly drafted and developed, and they built the culture. They spent $1 billion on a state-of-the-art training facility for the players. Talk to any Buffalo Bills player, most fun locker room in the league, and they win, and they have no problem getting guys to come to Buffalo. So Kevin Adams saying that in a press conference under the same damn ownership's hilarious to me.
No one edited that speech.
No. And he cited Josh Allen. Like, he cited Josh Allen in that conversation.
They're going to need a new GM soon. Far be it from me to ever be the optimistic one here. There is one very big difference in my mind between the Detroit Red Wings, Ottawa Senators, and the Buffalo Sabres right now.
Yeah.
All of Buffalo and Ottawa's key players for their future are on the roster and have been there for a couple of years now. Yeah, the Red Wings have Seider and Raymond and now Edvinsson up, but most of the core pieces, if you're talking volume of the Red Wings' future, aren't here yet. So we have that future optimism still. Danielson's coming. Kossa's coming. Shut up, Evan.
He's already here. I don't know what you're talking about. He's undefeated in the NHL.
Sandin Pellikka, MBN, like a lot of the players that are expected to carry a heavy load for the Red Wings in the future aren't here yet. Now, lots of time for them to flame out and bust. I'm not saying it's surefire bets here, but with Ottawa and Buffalo, they're there, and it ain't working. Ottawa's got one of the worst farm systems in the entire NHL, and they're one of the worst teams. That is a lethal combination and not in a good way. So I'm not saying the Red Wings are a lock to be good in the future. We've expressed our concerns, but at least we have that ray of optimism shining down on the Grand Rapids Griffins and the farm system and all that fun stuff. So Evan's right. This division might not turn over for another half decade, maybe a decade, but at least there's hope.
The lottery wins that those teams had and haven't been able to translate into actual on ice wins. Yeah, that it leads you to think that if, and God, I hope when Detroit gets any remotely similar luck, they're like the scale up of their victories in terms of drafting from 4th and 6th and 9th and 16th and whatever. If they get a 1st or 2nd or 3rd pick, like that's where the optimism comes in. But until it happens, it's not there yet. So one of those 4 teams has to take a step. And I'll tell you, it's hard to sit here and throw rocks from the Red Wings position, but I do think like those teams have been at it longer and it's a worse situation for them.
Yeah, like if you're thinking, between those 4 teams who have the most optimistic future, I mean, I can make an argument for all of them, but Montreal, they're still very young. They still have guys to bring in, and Detroit's in the same spot. Like I feel way more optimistic about the long-term success of those 2 teams than I do for Buffalo or Ottawa, just purely based on this is what we got. Now we need these guys to grow. There's no reinforcements coming in.
Okay, last point on the Red Wings here. Sebastian Cossa has been riding the pine as long as he's been called up, and we've talked the last episode or so about how that's okay. Like, this is a terrible Red Wings defense. And even though the team defense has been showing up to the point where they're not getting scored on a ton the last few games or whatever, it's not a good defense to be playing behind as a rookie goaltender. Like it's not going to instill confidence. But if the team wants to shake things up, they could look to Cossa if they want to inspire the fan base and excite the fans to come out and see something different because the on-ice product isn't going to be that much different. You could play Cossa. Talbot and Lyon are going to be out for at least another game, it was reported. So is there some credence to, do you play Cossa or are you still okay with him just coming up to back up and only coming in if needed? Lalonde said they're not decided on who plays Monday against Buffalo. Do you consider it?
I consider it. The simple reason to do it is, well, you don't want a goalie of his caliber sitting there and not playing for over a week, so get him some game action. I think even if he doesn't do well in his game against Buffalo, if he gets it, at least it gives him a taste of what the NHL is like in game. Like it's a different beast. And yeah, he's demolishing the AHL this year, but the AHL is not the NHL. He's probably served well by getting a taste of what the NHL feels like, even if it is the Buffalo Sabres. They've got some shooters. They got some scorers on that team. For all their warts, they still got a Tage Thompson, Erasmus Dahlin, and Alex Tuck. Like they'll keep you honest in the defensive zone at least. So I think there's some value to that. And if he does well, there's no harm in him going back to the AHL at an all-time high in his confidence. So I think there's value either way. I just don't like the idea of him sitting for 2 weeks and not playing. Give the kid a taste so he can know what to expect next year.
Yeah, Cossa sitting on the bench, not getting any game action, whether it be Detroit or Grand Rapids, is bad for both teams, I think. Detroit doesn't get to really, one game is a small sample size, but it really starts to see, okay, is Cossa just really good because he's better than everyone in the AHL? Or how much work is there that he needs to do to be NHL ready? And I think easing him in against Buffalo, although like Brad said, they do have some good shooting talent, I think that's a perfect time to put him in. And we always talk about, do you bring these rookies in when you're making a playoff push and the games matter so much more? Well, you've just lost 5 games in a row. I think now might be the time. Games couldn't mean almost any less than they do right now. And this would help motivate Sebastian Cossa. He gets into an NHL game, and if it doesn't go well, he now has a path on what he needs to work on. He comes more motivated because when you're lighting up a league, you think you got the world in the palm of your hand, and seeing what the NHL is like in the regular season would do a world for his development.
And I completely agree with the merits to both your points. And I would just say, and the Red Wings would obviously do this. You're putting him in, you explain to him, hey, this is going to be hard.
I don't think you even have to tell him. He seems like that kind of kid who just like, he's like, I'm ready and I want this.
He's cool, calm, and collected. You don't run a secret cabal of running the exclusive, illegally shipped and trafficked Grand Rapids Griffins Winged Wheel podcast co-branded hats without being cool, calm, and collected.
Absolutely.
But just going out of your way to make sure that the expectations are just go out there and play your game and see what it's like. Like, soak it all in. You're on the road. You don't have the pressure of the home fans. If it doesn't go your way, it matters zero because you're going to go back to Grand Rapids and absolutely tear it up like you have been all year. The fan base has to understand that too.
I think fans would. If Cossa doesn't get a game, I think fans will be more upset than if he gets a game and gets shelled.
And I don't think the fans would be thinking that if the Red Wings were actually winning right now, but this is pretty much like the only opportunity for excitement, which is why I think my mind has flipped a little bit on it, where I'm like, yeah, what the hell, why not?
Do goalies do rookie laps?
I think I've seen it sometimes. It's not so often where goalies come in as a rookie, like,
and start a game.
It's not so regular, right?
That would be hilarious, though.
And the rookies go buckets off for their first ever rookie
lap. That'd be hilarious.
If they pay the fine, yeah.
That could be risky for a goalie. I feel like he needs his bucket even in warm-up.
Probably. Anyways, all this to say also, like, Husso's been just fine, if not decent. Like, you want to blame him for the Norris goal, as we talked about. It's just a great shot, but sure. It's not like Husso lost Detroit those games.
If Billy Husso gave up 2 goals every game, we'd be thrilled.
Oh my God. We'd sign up for that all year.
Yeah, and he gave up 2 in each of his last 2 and 0 points to show for it.
Well, that is a lot of Red Wings conversation. Let's jump over to league news, which also
Did anything happen recently? Anything noteworthy?
We have to actually skate by this, but Luke Richardson got fired in Chicago.
Oh, yeah.
Anders Sorensen comes in as the interim head coach, first Swedish head coach in history. Good for him. Chicago had low expectations, but you can't have Bedard having the year that he was having. It's understandable. There's questions being asked in Nashville. Red Wings fans are going to look at this and say, if the Chicago Blackhawks have moved on from their coach, holy, not a terrible point.
It's probably worth mentioning in relating the Blackhawks coaching change to the Red Wings, where be careful what you wish for, because obviously we're hoping for change in some ways here. Chicago got their change, and our friend Steve Dangle pointed out after the Blackhawks lines in practice this morning, Bedard is centering Philip Kurashev and Ilya Mikheyev, who have combined for 5 goals and 6 assists in 49 games this season. So the same thing Richardson was doing with Bedard's line mates. The new guy doesn't seem to want to change.
We'll see.
Well, it's been working in Chicago, so why change a line that's been productive?
Let's jump over to New York. And
wow.
So the Trouba thing came to a head really fast, which is silly to say because we've been talking about it for years, it seems like now. But essentially, Trouba Very quickly, the rumors got spread, as they tend to do in New York, and it was, if this guy doesn't accept a trade to one of 4 or 5 teams, he's going to be waived. Didn't end up getting put on waivers. Start of the day, I had a couple people telling me it was going to be Detroit. Nothing finalized, but Detroit was the front runner. I had other people saying Columbus. Elliot Friedman reported Columbus. Buffalo's name was out there. Anaheim is the one who eventually makes the deal. Anaheim, and we'll talk about that in a second, like just how bad the trade was for Anaheim. But Pat Verbeek and the Anaheim Ducks took on Jacob Trouba, a year and a half more of a full $8 million contract, no salary retained by New York, and they gave up Vakanainen and a 4th-round pick. I don't care what you think about those assets. They gave New York stuff to help the New York Rangers. Because New York turned around and signed Igor Shesterkin to an 8-year, $11.5 million contract immediately. So thanks, Anaheim, for ruining everyone's fun. You just gave New York not only a free out, you paid them for the privilege. Stupid. This process was insane. If the Red Wings are on one end of the spectrum of not releasing anything, I mean this, trust me when I say the New York Rangers are on the other end. The amount of intentionally muddying the waters and poisoning the well information that is released from New York, and whether you want to say it's from the media or the team camp, it's happening all around to try to pressure players, to try to leverage teams. Players in New York and around the league are already not happy with how Drury handled this. Trouba, very obviously not happy. GMs around the league are not happy about the rumors that came out about their teams. And I don't mean just Brady, Tkachuk, and the Ottawa Senators, because that was out there. There's more than that. It is utter chaos, and anyone who knows me knows we don't report on the information we have unless we're triple, quadruple sure. There's an extra 5 layers on top of that when it has to do with the New York Rangers, because it's like malicious the way they weaponize that information. It was the Wild West for those 24 hours.
They were comfortably above 500, well in a playoff spot. When the Kreider and Trouba reports got out there, again, probably exactly how Ryan laid out, the Rangers followed that up by going 1-6. Now, I don't remember how their last couple games have went, but I remember one of the Rangers writers I follow was pointing that out, saying, hey, he wanted to kickstart some motivation for his team, and they cratered. It's New York. Players will always want to go to New York because it's New York. But maybe not anymore, because how do you want to play under that? I get it. It's a ruthless business. Vegas won a cup doing this. They were a little more respectful with how cutthroat they are. They weren't leaking reports and rumors. They just did their business.
They made their cuts surgically.
Yes. Hey, Jonathan, we love you. We appreciate what you did for us. We're not tendering you this contract. We're not paying you this. Good luck elsewhere. We wish you all the best. It's not like they spent the whole year sewering him, trying to lower his values and re-signing him. It's, okay, this is the decision we've made. Best of luck. Good luck to you. We no ill will. You played great for us, but we're upgrading. The Rangers are like, this guy sucks. That guy sucks. We want to get rid of this guy.
The Rangers are like, I don't recall saying good luck.
Yeah.
Well, are they going to learn their lesson? Because it kind of worked out for them.
That's the part that annoys the hell out of me, man. Like, the good news is, like, it's very hard to pin down what is absolutely what happened. And so I'm going to be careful saying, like, this is just what I am guessing based on the information I have. Not at all certain. Is it a coincidence that Detroit's name has been around Trouba for a long time? No. I don't want to say for sure the degree they were involved this time, but I will say I don't think the Red Wings and Steve Yzerman were ever close to doing something so stupid as what Anaheim did. I do wonder in the past if there was an offer or a trade deal where a Detroit player who had trade protection would have gone the other way to offset the salary. And like, there's been rumors of that player saying no to the trade because they had the trade protection. But I don't know that necessarily happened now or before. I don't think Detroit was ever close or in the mix for Trouba based on what was actually paid in the end. Because Trouba was asked on ESPN if he ever considered Detroit as a possibility, and he said, obviously, I've thought about that. I think somebody should maybe verify with the Red Wings if they were interested. Has anybody taken that route? Like, he was sassy.
Oh, yeah.
But I just don't think, based on what I was hearing, like that the Red Wings it wasn't a lack of interest in the player. We've talked a lot about what Trouba could do for this team and what was realistic. It was that Yzerman wasn't going to take $8 million, not just for free. He wasn't going to take it without something from New York. And why would New York do that if Anaheim was going to be so stupid as to pay for the privilege?
Yeah. If you're reading between the lines of what Trouba said there and the understanding of, as scummy as everything Chris Drury did here was, he was probably keeping Trouba's agent in the loop. Here's who we're talking to. Here are the options. These are the teams bidding seriously. These teams are interested in you, but they're not coming close to our price. The Red Wings were probably the team that said, yeah, we would like him, but not at that price, not at that acquisition cost. Because again, let's look at this from a Red Wings perspective. And obviously we're very, very happy the Red Wings did not make that trade. Okay, let's just get that out of the way. If you get Trouba at 40 or 50% retained, is he a significant upgrade on Jeff Petrie or Eric Gustafsson on your right side? Yes, he absolutely is. Is he good anymore? No. Is he worth $4 or $5 million? Probably not, but there's an argument to be made.
It's just another player in the Sherratt tier.
Yeah. So if the Red Wings could have got him half retained with no acquisition cost, or if they could have had another problem contract going the other way that was the same length or maybe longer, there was a path where this would benefit the Red Wings, right? And even if you want to go asset management, which is maybe what the Ducks are doing, where you acquire the player, you retain even more, and then you ship him up at the deadline, there's a ton of contenders who would have liked Trouba at $2-3 million per on a double retention. Right? So could be a positive asset. There were a lot of paths here that made sense for Detroit to do this. Yzerman clearly was not near the top of the bidders list, as we have learned and as we have saw, which is probably why Trouba said what he said, because the Red Wings were probably interested, but not seriously. They would have been, you can give him to us and you can retain some salary and we'll take him off your hands and we'll save you a few bucks. But I think that's probably what Yzerman was thinking, reading between the lines and the reports and everything that's been out there.
In any case, happy it wasn't Detroit because, wow, congrats, Anaheim. You have Radko Gudas and Jacob Trouba on the back end. Well, what's your plan? Because that room
Death?
is... Yeah.
Violence?
Pretty much. Like, hey, we're going down and we're going to make it hurt for you while we do it. That's their game plan.
Sure, we gave up 7 goals, but man, there were a couple big hits that game.
People love violence. And then the New York Rangers make Igor Shesterkin the highest paid goalie of all time, 11.5 a year. He gets that 8th year. He gets, $85 million or something in signing bonuses, a full no-move clause the entire way. And speaking of no-move clauses, Elliot Friedman reported that, based on the outcome of all of this, because, threatening to waive a player who doesn't waive his no-trade clause and the team that was going to trade for him would just pick him up on waivers, is it a loophole? Not really. It's not breaking any letter of the law. Is it breaking the spirit of it? That's what the players might argue here in upcoming conversations about future CBAs. I think the notion that the players will ask for no move clauses and no trade clauses to be combined into one. So a partial no trade is also a partial no move. So if you have 10 teams on your no trade list, you also have those 10 teams like they can't pick you up on waivers. And any kind of full no trade is also a full no move. That would be big for the owners and the teams to give up. Like the players would have to give something up. But that to me gets rid of a lot of this mess. And I wonder about that in the future.
I feel like it's going to be a loophole that will get closed in the next CBA because the Rangers already did this to Barclay Goodrow this year where they wanted to trade him to San Jose. He said, no, thank you. They threw him on waivers. San Jose claimed him.
And other teams have done it too. Tampa Bay, like it's not just the Rangers.
Yeah, 1,000%. And the players hate it. So you got to assume it'll be addressed. There is a little part of me that has this imaginative scenario in my head that warms my heart towards Jacob Trouba, a true Michigan boy, where Chris Drury went to him and said, you need to accept a trade or get ready to speak Ohio, buddy. And all of a sudden he's gone because he could never go to Ohio, but that's just something I made up in my head and no truth to the rumor, unless there is, in which case he's a top 5 favorite player of mine in the league. But yeah, it's such a scummy move. And to even threaten that twice in one season, oh boy.
It's definitely not popular. Look, if I had that contract, I would be doing whatever I could to get out of it. Whatever I could. And the easiest thing to do is not sign that contract, of course. But if you're there, then I do, as a GM, your duty is to, the same way people hate when like a publicly traded corporation doesn't act in the best interest of the customers. That's not their job. They have a fiduciary responsibility to the shareholders. That's kind of what the GM's job is here. So I don't think Rangers fans are mad at Drury right now. I think they're saying, oh my God, we have Shesterkin locked up and we're free of Trouba's contract and we got something out of it. People might be mad at him and the room will be mad at him, but the team is better for it.
Yeah, they start winning. The people have short-term memories at that point.
Us included. Anyhow, let's talk more about that in the future. Let's get into our final segment on this episode of the Winged Wheel Podcast.
We're going to overtime.
Overtime is brought to you by our Patreon supporters. Again, patreon.com/wingedwheelpodcast if you want to support the show. The bonus episodes, the Discord, the ticket giveaways to every Detroit Red Wings home game, all of that and lots more. It really, really, really does help the show. Let's take some questions here from our patrons. Xander says, Kreider, obviously meaning Trouba's name was out there. Kreider's very well still could be, even though Drury said he doesn't want the dust to settle a little bit. Kreider?
No, thank you.
I'll pass, but I mean, ask me again when the top line of the Red Wings continues to score the majority of the goals. Maybe I'll change my ways.
Dan Bell says, is it just me or is this team seriously unbalanced when Kane and Vlad are in the lineup? It'd be nice if those two were a part of a healthy scratch rotation. For me, Kane seems out of place and would be the first piece I'd try to move before the deadline. Maybe I'm biased against him because I just don't like him. It's irrational, I know.
He's one of the few expiring contracts that would actually get you some good value at the deadline. So do with that information what you will.
You know what I do with that information is I'm not sitting him for that reason. And when you're talking to other GMs, you're saying, oh, it's because of the line mates we couldn't give him. He's still good. I actually think Kane has a lot of blame to hold here too, but that's what you're selling to other GMs. And so I think for that reason, you're not sitting those players.
Last year when he was playing with some actual capable offensive hockey players, you saw what he can still do. So that's what you're hoping every other team's keeping in the back of their mind.
And I like Kane's reputation will transcend all of this. Like everyone will say, yeah, Detroit bad, but not Kane. And I do think Kane would be great for like a Florida, for example. Linda Hull says, if you could go back and change one thing in Yzerman's tenure, what would it be?
Can you pick losing the draft lottery?
That's actually the best answer. I would say pick any right-hand defenseman acquisition or signing and undo those or take term off of the Copp or Compher contracts. Like there's lots of things that you could go in there. How much does it matter in the end? I don't know. To me, I'm very happy with the first round picks. And so that's what I focus more on. Yeah, probably less term on one of the bad contracts.
The Wallman trade.
Yeah.
Just even if Jake Wallman has no future on this team, that was just insanely piss poor asset management. Imagine if he is putting up the numbers he is this year and you trade him now at the contract he's under.
First round pick.
People are talking San Jose might get a first for him. And Yzerman gave up a second to get rid of him. Like, I disagree with the general sentiment of he had no future with this team. But even if you live by that, you could have got a good premium back for him.
Bellingham Acid Ball says, if Yzerman were to land a superstar free agent in the $14 million range, what potential impact would this have on our core guys like Larkin, Raymond, and Seider compared to their long-term annual salaries? Is it possible one or more of them could become disgruntled or might seek a raise? And how could those dynamics work? So this is where in the NHL, like those guys will obviously not be thrilled that someone is making $14 million to their $8 or whatever, but there's no function in the NHL for them to seek a raise. It's just not with the player that like they're not going to have their contracts terminated. It's not ever going to happen. There's no restructuring of contracts. You live with it. And if they request a trade, they're going to get paid the same money elsewhere in terms of what their salary payout's going to be. Taxes might be a bit different, but not to the tune of $14 million. So would it suck for them? Maybe, but that's between them and their agent, honestly.
If that player's got a bad attitude and not contributing to the success of the team, that could get pretty bitter. But if they're doing that, the Red Wings have bigger problems anyway. I would think they're probably just happy they might start winning some friggin' hockey games.
Absolute hell for Frondell. That's a good one. Prospect profiles when? I am determined to wait until 2025. I just don't want to do them in this calendar year. That's just not the Christmas spirit, man.
If they don't win another game this month, do we start them this month?
Sure, I'll just start on December 31st, Brad.
Okay.
That's when I'll start them.
I will say I've had one eye on the CHL as of late, so do with that as you will.
That's more eyes than you usually have on anything.
That is true.
Jack Enthrolato says, can we get a prospect check on Danielson this year? How he's been performing in Grand Rapids. Seems like the Wings really need a 2C to land very soon. So to the tune of the Red Wings needing a second line center, between Danielson and Kasper, like, is it solved for sure? No, but the Red Wings are seeing what they want to see from both of them at this stage. And I think Danielson, like, he had a slower start, heated up. I think the past few games, it's been a little bit snake bitten for him in terms of production, but his progression over the course of the season is what you want to see. And so for Danielson, he's tracking well, where I think next year you're going to see him make a serious case for not just being in the lineup, but seizing a role in the lineup the same way Kasper has this year.
You're all undershooting. I'm talking about 1C. I think in a couple of years, Hagens could take it over Larkin.
That's what, look, man, that's why the T word is not, it's not scary to me.
Yeah.
Let's accelerate this thing. I don't know what voodoo we have to do to break the draft lottery terrible luck, but maybe it's maybe we psyched out the draft lottery gods by pretending the Red Wings were going to go for it, get really close one year, and then right after that just go, oh, we're in the mix again. Oh, you accidentally picked our lottery balls.
Brad, will you take a bite out of a full onion if the Red Wings... Would you eat an onion if the Red Wings won the draft lottery?
Yes, obviously.
Okay,
yes.
okay. I you know what? I'm trying to figure out the benchmark on your hate of onions. It does make sense to me, so I'm just trying to feel that one out.
Would you go full holes and like eat onions to sustain yourself for a week or something?
Like if I'm on a deserted island and all I have is onions to eat?
24 hours, you can only eat onions, and the Red Wings win the draft lottery. Do you do it?
Okay, well, there's an obvious loophole there that I'm going to take.
Not eat?
I'm just going to starve. But yes,
that's a father of two.
That's a normal day anyway.
But if I have to starve for 24 hours to get the Red Wings the first overall pick, I'm going to do it.
I'd starve you too.
Still upset over the pineapple, huh?
He had a great time.
I would do terrible, terrible things to win the draft lottery.
Well, that's probably a good enough time to stop recording on the main show and get to the bonus overtime episode.
And in the overtime episode, Evan's going to list out all those things.
I have them alphabetically. I'll open it right now.
Those aren't on video, and if we did put them on video, we might be able to make a lot more money, just not on this website. One of the only other ones. Let's wrap up this episode of the Winged Wheel Podcast. Folks, thank you so very much for tuning in. Again, if you want to see us at Winged Wheel Podcast Night in partnership with the Grand Rapids Griffins or with the Detroit Red Wings, again, January 18th and March 29th, respectively, go to wingedwheelpodcast.com/links or go to the links in the description to get your tickets as well as the bonus co-branded merch that we're giving away there. If you want to support the show, patreon.com/wingedwheelpodcast. It means the world to us. It's why we're able to do everything we do. And if you want to support the show, but Patreon's not for you, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube. Leave a rating, whether it's the stars or the thumbs up. Tell a friend about the show. All of that helps. To the sponsors of the Winged Wheel Podcast, thank you so much. And to all of our listeners, new and old, we really, really appreciate you tuning in and choosing to listen to us. And to all of our name level supporters on Patreon, we could not do this without you. Arjun Shankar, Yves Bartels on behalf of the Sarah Grand Foundation, Aikfer, Samuel Soderholm, Icon, Alexander Hansen, Ghost of OSBP, Glenn Brabham, Croner's Left Knee, Ashley Whitehead, Sea Lion, Matthew M. Rice, Adam Rose, Adam Suiza, Admiral Matt S. of the Cheesebag Navy, Asher Killian, Beer League Legend, Best James Bond, Carl, Brutanen Analuski, Carl Provi, Citizen High Five, Clip Clop Nene, Connor Scovey, Craig Kibble, Denny's Gamer Girl, Derek Enstam, Cider, Dickens, formerly Marlon Winchester, DJ Denton, Eric Hill, Jin and Yusi, Give Blood Fight Probert, Goose Looney's Drinking Club, Griffin, God Creatives, Hockeytown Love, Hockeytown Matt, Hassam Al-Qassem, Jay Gollum, Jacob Turner, Jeff Pridemore, John Ingalls, Jonathan Miller, Kalen Wood, Marcus, Marty, Matt Keeler, Matt McKay, Michael Edlund, Mr. Kuzi, R.A., Riley Enright, Roy Donk, Ryan Britt, Scott Martin, Skeletor, sponsored by the Wisconsin Winter Pickleball League for when you're most comfortable playing with cold, wrinkly balls. Stephen Ordeleb, That's What I Appreciate About You, Wallman's Elite Dancing D, Eyes Are Playing Stan, Aaron Hudson, General Andy Bohan of the Cheesebag Army, Sam Bankson, A.A. Ron, A.B., All Motor No Hands, Ann Stanislavski, Antonio Gracias, Axel Sandy Pelika, Bellingham Acid Balls, Bex, Chimkim Nutgits, Commander Ben Barron of the Cheesebag Space Force, Connor Layton, Corey Prieta, Darren Fick, Datsukes Dingleberries, Deep in Cider, Dylan Larkin, Trade Sacrifice, Eric Nance, Evan Beckner, Frank Stanley, Gene Sullivan, Grepsky, Griffey Boy. Hi, my name is who? My name is Chicka Slim Chungus. James Pridemore, Jeremiah Dobo, Jim, JM Rhapsody, Joey Jojo Shabadoo, Josh Yelchin, Chaotic Monkey, Keenan O'Donohue, Casper the Unfriendly Ghost, Kevin McCracken, Quaz, Larkin's Loyal Lemming, Les Grossman's Ungodly Firestorm, Linda Hull, Lucas Raymond, Mitch Minier, Ophelia, As Good As It Gets, Ryan M., Sam Migliaccio, Sam, I hope I got your name right, brand new Navy level supporter, welcome to the Dub Dub Club. Steven, that other guy, the Hodag, the Hat123, Trent Thoreau, Wings fan in St. Louis, Scott, and your second favorite patron. Thank you all so very much. Talk to you midweek.
Thanks for tuning in to the Winged Wheel Podcast. Be sure to visit wingedwheelpodcast.com, where you'll find links to subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. You'll also find ways to support the show, like Patreon, official podcast merchandise, and more. And don't forget to follow us on X at WingWheelPod, at Ryan Hanna, WWP, at Brad Crisco, and at Hockeytown Evan, as well as Winged Wheel Podcast on Instagram.